Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call the January meeting to order. Happy New Year to everybody. It's great to see everybody on this chilly evening. Glad to welcome those that are here in person and those that are watching online. I would much rather opt to be watching online if I had that option and stay warm. We're also glad to have Reverend Nancy Mack, pastor of John's Memorial Episcopal Church. And if Reverend Mack, if you would kindly join us down front and do the invocation. Most appreciative of your being here tonight.
Well, thank you for asking me. Let us pray. Gracious God, creator of heaven and earth, you have blessed this town with leaders of sound mind, integrity, and wisdom. Be with them this evening in their deliberations. Guide them in their discussions, and may your people be glorified in all of the decisions, all of the work that is being done in this town, and may this truly continue to be a town of faith, a town of peace, a town of warmth, a town of love. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, if you would kindly call the roll.
Mr. Dwyer.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Vincent.
Here.
Mr. Parrott.
Here.
Mrs. Amos. Here. Mr. Cole. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll suspend the normal order of business to take up a resolution that you have before you tonight. Clerk, if you would kindly read the resolution.
Whereas WFLO, the iconic hometown radio station, has served Central Virginia for almost 75 years, and together WFLO AM 870 and WFLO FM 95.7 offered a wide variety of musical entertainment as well as news, weather, sports coverage, and a local events calendar. And whereas the award-winning Call Flow show and the Trading Post hotline gained large listening audiences, and whereas the iconic radio station produced popular programs such as The Beat Show and Retro Rock and Roll with Ron Moody, The Swinging Ears, Wood's Weekday Lunch Break, Sunday Night Bluegrass with Henry Fulcher, and Sunday Morning with William Lynn. And whereas WFLO expanded their programming with popular weekend shows such as Chris Brochon's The Standards and Wood's Saturday Morning Jukebox, and whereas WFLO won many broadcasting awards over the years and was chosen by the Smithsonian Institute to represent small market radio stations during its folk life exhibits, and now therefore be it resolved that the Council for the Town of Farmville does join with WFLO's listening audience to express its appreciation for providing quality broadcasting services. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution of appreciation be placed in the minute book of the Farmville Town Council, and a copy be presented to Francis Wood, who served as president and general manager of Farmville's iconic hometown radio station.
Thank you, ma'am. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos. Yes. Mr. Cole, Mr. Hunter, Mr. Dwyer.
Yes.
On a unanimous vote, the measure is passed.
Thank you, ma'am. And I saw Chris and Francis Wood join us, and I would ask them if they would come down front and allow me to present this resolution. Thank you all. So you can get a picture from this side. You're ready. I know. Thank you on behalf of the town and its citizens and your listening audience for all the many years of enjoyment and all the things that WFLO has done for our community.
Can I get one, Java? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Davis, the next order of business is a presentation by Brown Edwards. Would you like to introduce the auditor, or Madam Treasurer, would you like to introduce the auditor?
Mayor, we have with us tonight our auditing firm, Brown Edwards, and representing them is Julie. So Julie, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie. Were you were the person that was on the phone last time we?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's nice for you to be here in person.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. My name's Julie Moore, and I'm the manager on your audit engagement. The audit starts in June and doesn't finish till mid-December, and so it's a long process, and we take a lot of time from your staff and bugging them with a lot of questions and requests. And Carol Ann and her staff always help. They always help us with a smile on their face, and they never complain, and we really appreciate them. So we would like to give them some big kudos. Earlier tonight, I met with the Finance Committee, and I went over details of the audit. If later on you review the audit package and you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have or any requests that you might have. The most important thing that you should take away from the audit was that you had a clean, unmodified opinion. That's what every audit strives for, and the town received that this year. I'd also like to point out that you had no new findings this year, and in fact, some of your findings decreased in the significance of them, and some went away altogether. So you're definitely moving in the right directions on things. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Anybody have any questions about the audit? Yeah, it's great news that there are no new findings
No.
and that some of the findings have gone away.
Yes.
And I'm assuming there are some recommendations in here. This is the
Yeah.
first time I've seen it.
I'm sorry. Yes. Like on page 55, I think starts the findings, and you'll see like prior year findings after that, and and then you'll see current year, and you'll see that some of the findings, like last year we had a finding that was a material weakness that now is a significant deficiency, which is a step below, and there was one finding last year that just went completely away because it was resolved. So.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions from anyone? Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk, the next section is public comments. Do we have anyone that has signed up for public comments?
No one has signed up.
Anyone wishing to speak that did not sign up? Okay, next item is our consent agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to pull anything out of the consent agenda? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 9 is the treasurer's report. Madam Treasurer?
Good evening. You have
evening.
December's treasurer's report before you. Under the unrestricted funds, we received our quarterly VDOT highway funds. I guess some of you know business licenses have been mailed out. They're due the end of February. The percentage collected of real estate through January 11th is 95.9, and personal property tax is 95.19. We will see that personal property go up even more because they do have to have the personal property tax paid before they can buy a business license. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
I make a motion we accept the treasurer's report. Second.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 10, redistricting. And I see that Melody Foster from the CDC is patiently waiting. Mr. Davis, are you going to introduce her?
Yes, sir, Mayor. I just want to give a quick overview. There were some questions in prior discussions with council members before Melody gets started. Obviously, this happens every 10 years. So the last time was in 2011. In 2011, it shows that at a March 9th meeting, there was a discussion about redistricting committees for the 5 wards. And that some council members had requested certain people be on the redistricting committee. 2 days later, the former town manager had put out a memo to Mayor Newman and members of council at that time and named a committee of certain individuals. And I can go through these now, and then we can talk about this later after the Melody gives her presentation of how we want to move forward for this time. The people on it were Dr. Edna Dean, Dr. Chuck Ross, Patty Cooper Jones, Lisa Rico, Cindy Morris, Gerald Spates, and several Longwood students. However, Melody has shared with me that her and Cindy did the heavy lifting of working through drawing the district lines together, looking at the populations and things of that nature that you have to look at for redistricting, which Melody will share with you in just a moment. And I don't have any records of this, but I'm assuming that from that was taken to the committee, and then the committee then brought it to council for a public hearing and approval. So after she gives her presentation, we can talk about some of the logistics, but I just want to give a background of where we were prior, and where I'll share my thoughts moving forward. But Melody Foster is here with us from Commonwealth Regional Council. We've asked them to help us once again with our redistricting. And I think she's going to share with you that this one's a little bit different from this year's from this census compared to the last, so we might have a little bit of work to do than we have in the past because of some changes, but I'm thankful that she was able to join us. So Melody, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Scott, and I believe you shared with them, have you shared with the town council members the map that I sent originally that shows the comparison from 2010 to 2020 that you actually see up on the screen right now, but I did send a PDF of that earlier, so I don't know if town council members have already had a chance to look at this information.
I've shared a few emails. I'm not sure if that was one of them
Okay.
or not for sure.
Okay. As Scott stated, there's some differences in this redistricting process this time. As many of you might know, the General Assembly passed some legislation that required that in the state of Virginia, localities use reallocated prisoner population for redistricting purposes. So the Virginia Division of Legislative Services was responsible for gathering that data and then supplying it out to the localities for us to use redistricting. So the totals that you're working with come from those numbers. And what they did was they gathered where prisoners' residences were, and that's where they're counted instead of in group quarters, wherever they were housed. So that's one thing that's different. Unfortunately, when they gather that information, another little nuance of this that makes it a little tricky is they did not gather demographic data of those prisoners. So when you look at the redistricting summary, whenever you see data, for instance, this chart, this district summary that I've got up on the screen here, whenever you do see demographic data, that data is actually from the true census numbers for those districts, because we don't have any demographics of the reallocated prisoners. All you're actually working with to do redistricting are the totals. So again, the demographic data that you will see that is being utilized is based only on the true census numbers. So that's a little bit tricky.
Melody, could you also tell them that, share with them that the reallocation doesn't also put the people where they actually live? Such
Well, and
as
that's
we
not
have.
really that's not really coming from the reallocated prisoner population. The other, as Scott alluded to, the other nuance that we definitely found out in Farmville, it wasn't as obvious in some of the other localities, is that the U.S. Census injected noise, this is their term for it, injected noise into the data for privacy protections to make sure that down at the block level, which is what you use in redistricting, that you're protecting the privacy of people. So in some cases, if they thought that a census block would divulge too much information, they may take that number and spread it out into surrounding areas. And I'm going to show you two very specific instances in Farmville that is going to cause you part of a problem. But what we're told by the Virginia Division of Legislative Services, you just have to work with these numbers because this is where they have injected noise. And I'll show you two instances of where this has created a problem. Give it just a second to zoom in here. You have a census block, if you can see it on the screen right here, that is a negative 93. Yes, that's correct, negative 93. So when I select that block, you can see how large it is. And it's saying there's a negative 93 people in there. So that's one problem you have to contend with, which was really obvious that we saw. But as we were moving around in the town, we discovered another, almost in a way worse number that's over in the town, actually near our office. And I guess it was so obvious to us because we knew exactly what the problem was. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move around. In the parking lot, just, I believe I have this on, just north of Greenfront, there is a census block that is nothing but a parking lot, but the census is showing there are 573 people living in that block. I'm sorry. Here it is. Do you see this block right there? And there's nothing there but a parking lot, and it goes to the river where the bridge is that crosses the Appomattox River. This block has no people living in it, but it's showing that there's 573 people in that block. So that's two of the issues that unfortunately Farmville is having to deal with. While it affects Prince Edward as well, as you can imagine, it's not as big a problem for them because it's spread out over the entire, county. So those little nuances, obviously are causing you some problems. And I would say that's definitely why when you look at what each district is, I'm going to read out what the current results are of each district. Now keep in mind, what you want to achieve is plus or minus 5% in each election district. District A, which is shown in red there, is a negative 10.54. District B, which is in yellow, is negative 19.85. District C, which is in blue, is a negative 12.06. District D, which is in green, is a negative 0.55. And then District E, which is kind of the tan color there, is 43.07. And I'm sure part of the reason why that one is so far off is partly because of that 573 injected noise that's in there. So you've got some real challenges to get all of these lined up to plus or minus 5%. I'm sure it can be done. It's just a matter of moving blocks around. I can't recall, is there anybody on town council who participated in this process before and has seen how this software works?
Mr. Reed, myself, and Mr. Hunter were involved in 2011.
Just to give you an example of how this works, what you do is basically just select a block, for instance, this one, and at the top here, you can see it tells me how many are in it. There are 20 people in that block. If I want to move that block from one district to the other, I literally just do this, and it automatically moves it, and it automatically adjusts the deviations as they come up on the screen. So it's very, very simple to move around. And like I said, I can work with staff or I can work with a committee. It can be done on the screen, while you're participating there and I'm participating virtually. I've already helped Cumberland pretty much come to a plan on theirs. They just haven't decided whether they're, I think, formally going to adopt it yet. Lunenburg has theirs ready for adoption. In fact, I believe they may be adopting theirs tomorrow night. So it's a very simple process. It's just a matter of, it's a numbers game. It's a matter of moving, blocks around to achieve what you need to do to get your numbers all lined up.
Melody, how do you handle the noise, particularly the 573 people living in a parking lot? How do you handle that?
There's really nothing I can do. I mean, the one thing that the town could do is to raise a challenge to the census. I've sent Scott, I've sent everybody that's participating in redistricting the process for that through the census. And honestly, I think y'all definitely have a case for that. Unfortunately, though, you still have to move forward with redistricting unilaterally while you're doing that. And I believe, if I'm correct, I believe Farmville had to challenge the census last time. I believe last time they put too many of the college students in one block. They kind of congregated all of them together and didn't have them spread out into the correct census blocks. And I'm pretty sure, if Scott checks his records, I believe y'all had to challenge the census last time. But last time, because there wasn't a delay in getting the census out, you had enough time to get the challenge in, get it approved, and then use that in your redistricting process.
So in the meantime, those 573 people living in the parking lot have to go in a ward. They have to be counted in a ward.
That's correct. Now, like I said, what you could do is you could, go through that process and request a challenge, and then ask, if you can, find out what the status is of what you need to do with redistricting in the meantime. But when I asked at Division of Legislative Services, her understanding was that you would still move forward, which seemed odd to me. I mean, the whole point would be to get this corrected so you wouldn't have this as a problem.
And the code says we have to have a new redistricting plan in place 60 days prior to the election, which would be a June primary, so we'd have to have it in place by April.
That's correct. That's my understanding.
And I don't think that the federal government is going to have you an answer on these 500 and some people before April.
They won't even read the mail by April. So the question is, how would council like to proceed? Apparently last time some staff people worked with you, or a staff person worked with you to do the initial heavy lifting, brought it to a committee, brought it to council, had a public hearing. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what our
Yes,
record should.
I believe that's what happened last time, but like I said, it could be done however you would like for it to be done.
So do you need, if you need one or two staff people to work with you to get the process moving?
Yes, that'd be fine.
So will we have citizens' input, correct?
They would work and develop a plan, and then we can have a committee that can look at it and have input. Again, it's, from what I'm understanding, it's going to be difficult once you figure out the plus or minus 5% to do a whole lot of moving. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you know, like I said, District E is over 43.07%. So it's going to have to lose a lot of population and shift. And districts A, B, C, and D were all way under. So all of it's going to have to shift from one side to the other.
And Melanie, one of the other things that I'm going to throw out there, because it's been brought up to me, I know when the State Redistricting Commission started on their task, they were tasked with not considering where individual legislators lived. And I assume when you do this for the town, you do not look at where individual council people live and make sure their district is quote-unquote protected.
Well, it's actually entirely up to you, that the town can set its policy of what it wants to do. I will say in the other localities, they are looking at that. They do try to protect the current district. Now, remind me exactly how this works in the town, because you've got districts A through E, but then you also have 2 at-large members. So how does that work for the at-large?
The 2 at-large and the mayor, myself, we all 3 run at-large. We are elected by the entire town.
Okay.
So there are 3 of us that redistricting makes no difference, because we have to run in the town at large. The other 5 people run in a ward.
Okay. If Scott can get me their physical addresses, I can actually put place markers on the map as well to make sure we know where they live.
But the larger question is that what council wishes to do?
Yes.
Melody, while they're thinking about that, there are some other parameters that you can't, they have to be continuous. So if you can discuss some of those other things that are mandatory during redistricting.
Yeah, you try to make sure that they're contiguous and compact. I will say that while you say those things, and that sounds very logical, as you can understand with your numbers, sometimes you can end up with things that don't necessarily look like that, just because the numbers are what really come first. But yes, what you try to do is try to keep things contiguous and compact. In other words, if you're going to have to move a line, you know, and within a town, it's easier because your roads are a lot of the reason, you know, are going to be a lot of your physical markers. You know, to try to keep things, if for instance, on the same side of the road, and not, you know, jump back and forth. But again, that can be very difficult with the amount of change that you're going to have to make.
And let me digress just a second. I am remiss. Mr. Davis, I understand that our new community planning director is here, and we didn't introduce him. Would you kindly do that?
Yeah, I was going to do that under my report.
Go ahead and do it now, because he's fixing to get a job.
Lee, could you come up for just a few minutes? I was just stand right there if you want. I'm happy to introduce, I've talked a lot about him and I've shared his information with all of you. But Lee started with us about 3 weeks ago, mid-December, as the new Community Development Director for the town of Farmville. He comes to us from the town of Strasburg as the Director of Planning there. Prior to that, he has many years of experience in Henrico, and actually, he began his career in his hometown of South Boston as really their first planning director, and if you will, in that town. So Lee comes with a lot of experience, a lot of education, and certifications as a certified zoning administrator, a member of AICP.
I'm not AIC.
I'm not even going to try that. And so we're happy to have him and bring his talents to the town of Farmville.
Lee, welcome. How do you feel about working on redistricting?
We've had that
It's the
discussion.
job, so we'll go ahead and definitely interact with the regional commission or with the regional council. And I had a very brief conversation with Ashley about it since she was here for the last one. And basically, what our game plan is initially is to just dust off the methodologies from last time and see what the differences are and what we need to do, and then obviously go to the regional council and move forward from there.
Mr. Davis, is your plan for Lee and Ashley to work on this?
Yeah, my recommendation to council mayor was to let staff level positions such as Lee and Ashley work with the CRC, come with a recommendation either to council can be the committee, because you're going to have a public hearing to let the population, the town know what the districts are and have their input, or you can have a separate committee that looks at the work that they've done and then refer it back to the town council. There are several places that have redistricting committees. I just don't know if they're not actively in drawing the map. I don't know how much they're going to understand of the changes and how we would get to the districts that we're trying to get to meet the requirements in order for that to happen. But those are my recommendations for council.
And Mayor, I prefer that we have community involvement with the committee. So once Lee and Ashley do their job, we'll have a committee from the community, not a whole lot, to discuss it and see exactly where we stand.
Okay, sounds like a plan. But initially, we need to get rolling because we're under a timeline, right, Melody, of council really needs to approve something at their April meeting.
What my understanding is the deadline specifically was December 31st, but it was understood that no locality probably was going to meet that because of this huge delay in getting the census data. So as you mentioned earlier, most are shooting for to make sure they have the redistricting done by at least 60 days before the most recent election, which there's a primary in June, I believe. So I think most people are shooting to be done by April.
Okay, so if we can start with Lee and Ashley working with Melody, and then we can work on a committee, if that's the desires of council, and then we still, even with the committee, we still have to have a public hearing and for the entire public to comment before council can adopt. What else you need, Mr. Davis?
That's it.
Lee, officially welcome. You've got a job on night one. Thank you for being here. Scott has sung your praises. We've all read your resume, and so welcome to Farmville. We're glad to have you.
It's a privilege to be here, and I want to thank Dr. Davis for giving me a chance to work here and to work with you all. I've already obviously been working with the staff. First of all, I do want to say that Ashley, who's been with the town for a significant part of her career, is definitely the brains and the brawn behind the community development department, and I fully recognize that. Also wanted to mention that Will Nash, who has been with the town for a major part of his career, will be retiring. So we've been working through several items, working on some hires because we do have a couple of vacancies. Also, just taking a look at some of our processes and trying to formalize some internal processes, trying to come up with some manuals and indexes, checklists, forms of that kind of thing, we rely heavily on institutional knowledge here, and I want to try to get some of that down on paper so that we can pass that on and make sure that we remember everything that we're supposed to be remembering. Training is going to be a big thing too. A lot of people have asked me what my approach is to things. I do want to be fair, thorough, and objective in everything that we do, but also we want to be helpful as well. So some of the activities that I've undertaken so far, I've met with the PC chair, the Planning Commission chair, John Miller. I met with him for 2 hours the other day and very excited to work with him. And Doug Stanley came to see me a couple of weeks ago. Of course, we knew each other from the Shenandoah Valley when he was up there. So I was very encouraged to see him and a familiar face here as well. But again, it's a privilege to be here, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Melody, back to you. First, thank you for taking us on. What else do you need from council?
That is all I need. I guess I'll be in touch with Ashley and Lee, and we'll get started.
When might we see your first draft, your first efforts?
I would think, unless there's any problems, I would think you probably should see your efforts by the next council meeting. I mean, I don't think there's any reason why I can't work with them to come up with at least one scenario by the next meeting.
Okay. Any questions? Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much. We look forward to, it appears you have a challenge with all the noise you have to work with to make this map work. On another note, are we going to, Mr. Davis, file a challenge to the noise, or are we just going to let that pass by?
It's up to you all. I don't know that, as she said, with Division of Legislative Services, I don't know that it's going to impact the redistricting at this point. And what that would cause overall. So
sounds like we deal with it and move on. What's the pleasure of council?
If I understand correctly, we're stuck with what we've got. If they were to make a change, if we challenged and made a change, it would be too late before our fall elections regardless. Am I correct?
I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to review it and have it back to us before we have to make a decision before the June primary to have them at.
Proceed on.
Okay, we'll keep moving forward. Melody, again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. You do the same. Next item is 11, discussion of COVID revenue loss ARPA funds. Mr. Davis?
Mayor, we said at the December meeting that we would come back to you at either the work session, which we did not need and we canceled, or this meeting. And so our staff, Kierwan and her staff, had provided, as you knew, we had to change from fiscal year numbers to calendar year numbers for this method. We provided our auditors with the information. They were working with us, and we came up with some final revenue loss numbers in calendar year. However, on January the 7th, we received information, and so did our auditors from the U.S. Treasury, that they have issued a final rule. If you remember a month ago, I said that there were interim rules in place and there was not a final rule, and that was something that would, could be an issue down the road. Well, they have issued a final rule, which has made some changes. And so we want to make sure, and sort of our auditors, that there are some changes, they don't know how small or how large until they review it, that it pertains to our revenue loss and how it's calculated. So I'm afraid that we do not have the numbers that you're looking for because we want them to be accurate.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Next item is 12, request authorization for the town manager to sign option agreement with AC Power LLC.
This is another step in the solar project at the landfill that we own, or the closed landfill that we own. Let me preface that. And so this agreement allows us, gives them their lease options, and for them to do more due diligence and actually work with Dominion and some other potential subcontractors.
Any questions? If not, do I hear a motion?
Move that we authorize the town manager to sign an option agreement with AC Power.
Second.
Motion and second. If there are no questions, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
On a vote of 5 ayes and 0 nays, the measure is passed.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 13 is appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And I know your packet says the Personnel Committee was going to meet and review the applications, and I believe there are a number of them, Mr. Davis, number of applications.
We have a number of applications
Yeah.
for one position.
So, and the Personnel Committee, because of healthcare situations, was not able to meet today at 5:30. So why don't we just move this till next month's meeting and give them, since there are multiple applications, give them a chance. I have not seen them. They were not in our packet, right?
They were added to Dropbox.
Okay. But it must have been later this evening, right? Yeah, so I think in fairness, to give everybody time to look at the applications and the people that have expressed an interest, we'll just move this to to next month's meeting. Extension of COVID leave.
Well, I've come to y'all, I think this is the third time since the federal government required it at first, and then it was up to localities and states later on to amend it. We are seeing, obviously in our area, an increase in cases of COVID, and I still stick by that. I think we should extend this leave a little bit longer so that employees do not feel that they have to burn or use their personal time off for this, and that we would have a COVID leave of up to 80 hours. Once again, once you've used all that time, then you don't get any more from the original. And so I just ask that we extend that time period. I'd like to extend it through the end of the fiscal year to June 30.
I'll make a motion that we extend the COVID leave.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? If not, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
On a vote of 5 ayes and 0 nays, the measure is passed.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item is the appointment of to the Farmville IDA. Do we also want to just move that to next month as well?
This was just informational, Mayor, that
Okay.
we have several that are expiring at the end of February, and so that we'll need to get these on your agenda hopefully for the February meeting. So now the Personnel Committee is rather busy.
Yeah, so we can just look at all of it in February. Thank you, sir. Next item is a partial refund for Kentucky Fried Chicken Bacon Enterprises sold their franchise on 11/2. New owners have purchased a license. Personal property and utility bills have been paid. And the amount is $546.88.
Make a motion, we approve the partial refund of KFC's business license.
Second.
Motion and second. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos. Yes. Mr. Dwyer.
Yes.
On a vote of 5 ayes and 0 nays, the motion is passed.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item is standing committees, and I'll just simply ask if anybody has anything to report. I know because of COVID and all that's been going on, committees have really, folks have not had an opportunity to get together, and we are all wearing our masks up here tonight. We would socially distance, but the equipment does not allow us with the cameras and microphones to socially distance. So hopefully by the time we get to February, Omicron will begin to die down a little bit, and things will be a little bit back to normal, whatever normal is. So anyway, anything from committees? Anything from committees? Okay. Mr. Davis, staff report.
Mayor, I was going to introduce Lee, but now we've taken care of that. The only other thing I want to mention is how lucky that the town is. I know we say this a lot, and especially in the 4 years that I've been here, of the employees that we have, but it really shows how well they perform, especially during a time when most people hopefully are home and not traveling and don't have to work, and that is during storm situations. And we had probably about 5.5 inches of snowfall last week in a short period of time. And I just want to commend several groups that send out messages and say, hey, the rest of you can stay home except for essential personnel. And those essential personnel are Public Works, our communication center and emergency communication center, and our fire, police, and rescue. I know fire and rescue don't necessarily work directly for us, but I include all of them because if you can listen to the radio, that's where all those are the people that are handling a lot of the situations that are occurring, and they put in time that many of them didn't have power at their own homes, but they're here because that's what they know their job requires during that period of time, so that our citizens and businesses can be taken care of. And I just want to commend all of them. We get roads clean faster than places I've ever seen before. And we have some new people on staff that were learning this time and did really well. And I just want to let all the employees know how proud I am and appreciative of their efforts. And don't hold your breath, but we might be back at it later this week.
If I can inject there for the benefit of all of council, we've had over the last couple of years of Mr. Davis being in the town manager's role, conversations about Mr. Davis being involved and on site and on ground with the crew. And I talked to him several times during the snow, and I will tell you that he was out riding. Thank God he was not pushing snow, but he was out riding with the crews. He was out with the mechanics. He was definitely boots on the ground during this storm. And I think that allows him the opportunity to really see what our town forces do, what it looks like, what you go through out there. There is no substitute for being out there and seeing for yourself. You can get a report, you can talk to your staff, but unless you are out there and see what they're going through and see how things really operate, that's when you really learn. So kudos, Mr. Davis, for...
And I even took my life in my own hands and rode with Robin Atkins. No, I'm just...
Anything else, staff report, Mr. Davis?
No, sir.
Chief, anything from staff report?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. I have several things I'm excited to report tonight. If you remember, we had a shooting incident back Christmas Eve on South Main Street. I'm so excited to report that we have identified the shooter, and we have warrants on file, and we are actively seeking his whereabouts at this time. As far as the loud noise complaints that we talked about several months ago, we had a case. One of the first cases came in today. We actually had 2 juveniles come to court, and Mr. Elder was with the officers when they went in. Both of them happened to plead guilty. The judge did not seem to have any problem with the ordinance whatsoever, and actually instructed them that if they did not take care of the problem and they came back to Farmville, then they were subject to get another ticket. So we do have another one coming into General District Court next month, and we'll see how that turns out as well. Over the past several months, we've had a lot of trailer thefts in the town, in the county, and Cumberland, Buckingham County as well. Just last Tuesday night, we had one stolen from the old Title Max building on South Main Street. Lo and behold, a brand new camera system that we put up at Millwood in South Main caught the vehicle entering the parking lot and leaving with the trailer. Then all the other cameras all the way down Main Street out 45 caught the vehicle coming through town. With the assistance of Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, we were able to identify that vehicle, and now we have identified 3 of, I would say, 6 trailers. Don't hold me to that quote, but we have identified that the same person is involved in stealing all these trailers. So, and last on my list, you all know what we've been tasked with as far as overtime with the police department in dealing with ECOs. I've virtually exhausted my overtime budget already this year. So I looked into a grant that was out there for overtime pay. We applied for $25,000 in overtime funds, and last week we were awarded that grant. We have to make an $8,300 match, which the match we have up to a year to actually pay, so we can work that into our upcoming budget for next year, but we can go ahead and start using that money immediately. So good things have been happening.
Great news on all fronts. Any questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Atkins? You're excited about the weather forecast for this weekend? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have anything? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned.